May the God who creates us, redeems us, and sustains us be with us this day and remain with us always. Amen. Let's be seated. Good morning. I am delighted to be here with all of you. I very much enjoyed my time. I was here on Friday evening and with Maureen and Drew and a goodly number of folks who gathered to watch the documentary about the Philadelphia 11, the first 11 women who were irregularly, and then we decided it was okay, irregularly ordained. And I am very much looking forward to having conversation with all of you about the topic of women's ordination, of which I have some opinions, after the service. Sometimes I wonder how it is that anyone ever decides to follow Jesus. Much of what he teaches is neither pragmatic nor is it palatable. Instead, some of it is just absurdly hard. Give all of your money to the poor and come follow me. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant. The one of you who is without sin may throw the first stone. Whoever wants to save their life must lose it. Anyone given away all of our money to the poor? I haven't. And Jesus says, looking at the 12 who have said yes to his invitation to follow him, the 12 who have left their livelihood and their families and walked on down the road after him, they hear him say, and it just gets harder, they hear him say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you, and if anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. Now I wonder how to do this now in February 2025. In previous times of my life and in the world coming and going, this admonishment has felt somewhat removed, kind of metaphorical, kind of a rule of thumb thing to keep in mind when I maybe had a disagreement with someone who had a different opinion. And now, and I feel like I'm probably not the only one, I feel a divisiveness in our country, in our communities, and even in our congregations. That seems to include wide swaths of people. And I wonder how to live out this injunction in the midst of my distaste, my dislike, and perhaps more accurately described, the contempt I find myself experiencing as I read of prominent members of our government rewriting history and claiming that Ukraine started the war in Russia. Or when I hear of USDA employees who were working to combat the avian flu, thoughtlessly fired, and then 2 weeks later I read of the clumsy attempts being made to rehire these essential workers while the flu flies on. And the thoughts I have as I see the order to cap the National Institute of Health research grants at 15% reimbursement, a change that will cause Michigan's top 3 medical research universities, the University of Michigan, Michigan State, and Wayne State University, if it's enforced, the cap will cause these research facilities to lose $200 million a year. And I think about all of the medical advancements that will not happen and the people who will die because of these decisions. And then I hear Jesus' words, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you are not condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven." And I am without words at the notion of offering love and compassion and mercy to the people who have conceived and carried out these actions. I stand convicted, and this feeling puts me squarely at odds with the words of Jesus Christ. Conservative social commentator Arthur C. Brooks has an interesting take on this predicament, and he writes about it in his book, Love Your Enemies: How Decent People Can Save America from the Culture of Contempt. And Brooks points out the obvious, that when we treat someone with contempt, that person will never forgive us. He says that contempt, as opposed to anger, is a cold emotion. He says anger is kind of a hot emotion, but anger is cold, but contempt is cold. And contempt, he says, is when we hold a belief of the utter worthlessness of another human being. And he also says that this can be an addictive emotion, an addictive behavior, a behavior that may be the undoing of American civil society. And Brooks cites the work of marriage counselor John Gottman, interesting guy, who, after an hour of interviewing a couple, is able to predict with a 94% success rate as to whether or not the couple will still be together in 3 to 4 years. And part of what Gottman looks for in the couples is whether or not they speak to each other with contempt. Gottman says, if you can induce married people who are at odds with each other to stop the cycle of contemptuously criticizing, then it is possible for the couple to reclaim the connection they may have had at the early stages of their relationship. So, with couples who want to work on saving their marriages, Gottman gets them, and sometimes he makes them even carry around a notebook. Gottman gets them to say 5 nice things before they're able to offer 1 criticism. Because part of the issue with speaking with contempt is that it is a cycle that fuels itself both externally and internally. Think about it. The external one is easy. I say something contemptuously to you, you say something contemptuously to me, I come back at you, and it goes. And isn't that fun on social media? But there's also an internal fueling. And that is when we offer contemptuous critiques of another, our responses, our reactions are bypassing the prefrontal cortex, that part of our brain that processes conscious response, conscious reactions, and instead the contemptuous responses and reactions are coming from the middle of our brain in that walnut-sized portion that's associated with the lizard part of our brain known as the nucleus accumbens. Now, as best as I can tell, with my bachelor's degree in biology, which my parents paid for and were then confused that I wanted to become a priest, the nucleus accumbens concerns itself with motivation, reinforcement learning, and pleasure, and the Pavlovian instrumental transfer, all of which is to say that this is the part of the brain that plays a role in creating addictive behaviors. It's that part of our brain that gets a positive jolt each time we do something like that. And because we like it and we get a little bit of pleasure, it begins to hardwire our responses to do it over and over again. But if we can break the cycle between responding without thinking and instead wait, process, and then offer a response that includes a positive affirmation of the individual, then our brain slowly gets rewired into different behaviors. And we create different ways of interacting with each other. And Brooks believes that we can take these interactions beyond marriage into the world of citizenship. And he says the point is, and hear this, the point is not to stop disagreeing, but to stop transmitting our belief or holding our belief that the person with whom we disagree is unworthy of care. Love your enemies. Jesus didn't tell us to agree with them. Rather, we are to love them. And loving them means staying in relationship with them. Dismissing, devaluing, dehumanizing them will only increase the cycle of dissonance, despair, and contempt. And friends, I cannot contemptuously dismiss, deny, or dehumanize. We cannot be those people. We are the other Christians. We can love our enemies and not acquiesce. We can turn the other cheek and not be passive. We can follow Christ's teachings of love, mercy, compassion, and forgiveness. But remember that love, mercy, compassion, and forgiveness extends to all. Otherwise, I am not following Jesus. And no one ever said that following Jesus was easy. Jesus said, pick up your cross and follow me. Amen.